It sounds loud, right? Or how does it sound? Do I sound okay, guys? Can you hear me okay?
You have a little echo.
All right, so let me see which sound I'm on. I am on the echo canceling thing, but if I don't put it on this way, then you will not hear anybody else in the room. And, you know, and Clarence is too important not to hear. As simple as that. So I'm gonna leave it on here. Jeff, this is the first time in the Torah that the priests are referred to as doctors. Well, I'm not sure the priests are doctors, but they're referred to as something. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't given them, I'm sorry. You do not hear the sound coming out of there. So you check it out. You check it out, see what we got, see what's going on, see if everybody comes. Anyway, so they're moving to Mamaroneck? How nice is that?
I know, I just.
Where are they moving?
They just got accepted to Rushmore, which was where we lived when we first.
Oh my
moved
God,
up.
is that great?
Yeah.
Yeah, what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. We got the importance.
I'm so excited. It's
That's great.
I'm saying that. I know what they're about.
Now, do you think it was just coming that loud out of our computer? You know what, maybe because we adjusted the computer for yesterday for,
That's what I was thinking.
maybe we did, because remember we had, you know who spoke yesterday at the funeral? Of Hanan Rotem. Hanan Rotem, 75-year-old guy, doctor. He was in Sayeret Matkal. So he was in that sort of secret ops in like, you know, like Green Beret, Navy SEAL combined, and in the Israeli army, and then, but the guy who sort of got him into it and like interrogated him became his best friend and buddy, Ehud Barak. So Barak spoke at the funeral so beautifully yesterday. So, I mean, just a tribute, the kind of tribute you hope for. Really nice. But we had to do dry computer, and initially it worked, and then when we went to do it, it didn't work. But thank God Carlos came through. Otherwise, I'd be fried.
What's the section called? The army section called?
Sayeret Matkal, which is an acronym. I don't remember what it means. I used to know. Matkal is definitely an acronym. Sayeret. Say again?
General staff.
General staff. Oh, so it's the special unit that does deep reconnaissance, you know, for like for the highest level of arm. Yeah, good to see you. They're just flocking in here. I want you to know, flocking in. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Where are we? Well, we're sure. Who's picture is who's on? Let's just see who's on. Let's see participants. We do not have our usual drove. Let's see. It's fine. We're just gonna have that. Everybody's gonna have to share more. That's good. I like that. I like that. Let's see. Simon. Let's see. Lovely. Very nice. Victors are on. Lovely.
Packers, the Minnesota Kid, and Yukon will face on the stage. I'll be roll. Andreas Carter, Rebecca Bobo, I'm Ryan Rucco. Sports Center is coming up next.
Thank you, Ryan. A little bit of really needed to left. DJ all, but
you needed to see was the last 1 minute and 40 seconds of this frantic, heart-pounding, incredible finish here in South Carolina. Sunday night for the championship. I mentioned the hometown hero, Paige Beckers. Getting it done. Hopkins, Minnesota, just 10 miles away. Stanford had the great interior defense. UConn was shorthanded. Gino talked about it. We'll talk to him in a second. Lacey Hull for
No, I'm not, whoever's listening to the really good sports thing, it's really exciting, but it makes me a little nervous.
an odd feeling on this stage for UConn. Normally it's a runaway.
It's UConn.
63-58.
Well, it's clearly somebody who's decided to, to share.
Just take me through, our viewers through those last 2 minutes.
So why don't we, here comes Tom. We'll give it just a minute of Tom coming in, and then we're gonna start. I think Raj is controlling. I appreciate it, Raj. I know a few people are away today. A couple people on the West Coast, but that's okay. It means we'll get more of a chance to share and schmooze. Morning, Dr. Conklin.
Good morning, sir.
So I'm gonna unmute everybody. Right, you can unmute yourself. I can't do that. You can unmute yourself if you want. And then
I
you
wanted
can,
to say, Rabbi, that
Yeah.
you have no idea how much I appreciate being able to participate in this even from a distance.
you know what? And I sense that, which is beautiful. Share with us in the blessing. Baruch
Baruch atah Adonai
Hi.
Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kidashanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivonu la'asot divrei Torah.
Amen. I'm gonna mute everybody because I can. And now Raj has graciously gone to the beginning of the portion. This is a portion we've studied many times, not with this Koshi specifically. So it always brings something new. And I think that the Drash especially is really apt and brings a lot of perspective. And with the beginning of the pandemic and things we experience and continue to experience, but who ever thought about quarantine in a real way before this? Nobody. Seldom did we. Not nobody, but seldom. And so it became almost common parlance for us. And so these are I always call them the dreaded double portion of Tashri and Mitzorah that seldom, do we want a bar bat mitzvah to get assigned because what are they going to talk about? Truth is, there's great wisdom. And since the pandemic, I think even greater insight because of what we've lived through and what we continue to go through in a way that is new. So I'm going to start here with Lisa reading the text, and then I'll frame the Koshi as we go along. We're going to read from chapter 13, the first 17 verses, even though we don't need all of that, but it's important to get some frame.
The Eternal One spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when a person has on the skin of the body a swelling, a rash, or a discoloration, and it develops into a scaly affection on the skin of the body, it shall be reported to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons, the priests. The priest shall examine the affection on the skin of the body. If hair in the affected patch has turned white and the affection appears to be deeper than the skin of the body, it is leprous affection. When the priest sees it, he shall pronounce the person impure. But if it is a white discoloration on the skin of the body, which does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and the hair in it has not turned white, the priest shall isolate the affected person for 7 days.
Right, so even though you're reading, you're saying, ay, ay, ay. So it somehow is a really good teachable moment for us from the actions of the priest to try to understand how the Kohen's treatment of the Mitzorah teaches us about our own physical and spiritual state of being and how healing happens in some sense. lots of things. So read a few verses, Moses.
On the seventh day, the priest shall conduct an examination, and if the affection has remained unchanged in color and the disease has not spread on the skin, the priest shall isolate that person for another 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest shall again conduct an examination. If the affection has faded and has not spread on the skin, the priest shall pronounce the person pure. It is a rash after washing those clothes. After washing those clothes, that person shall be pure.
All right, so there's a pronouncement after a 7-day period, pure, and a little more, but if the rash should spread on the skin after the person has been seen by the priest and pronounced pure, that person shall again report to the priest. And if the priest sees that the rash has spread on the skin, the priest shall pronounce that person impure. It is leprosy. Okay, and by the way, leprosy, it's not, Dr. Tom Lander will say, it's not Hansen's disease, it's not that, but we're not going to medical diagnosis because here's the first clue. This is not a medical treatise. It's not supposed to be medical, right? This is more than medical.
Oh, of course, it has to be.
Right.
All right, I'll comment that.
All right. So, Tom, go ahead. When a person has a scaly affection,
it shall be reported to the priest. If the priest finds on the skin a white swelling which is turned from hair white, with a patch of undiscolored flesh in the swelling, it is chronic leprosy on the skin of the body. See, I don't know who named it leprosy. Leprosy is ancestors disease. This isn't maybe. Anyway, so far. If it's chronic leprosy on the skin of the body, and the priest shall pronounce the person impure. Being impure, the person need not be isolated. If the eruption spreads out over the skin so that it covers all the skin of the affected person from head to foot, wherever the priest can see. If the priest sees that the eruption has covered the whole body, he shall pronounce as pure the affected person, who is pure from having turned all white. But as soon as the undiscolored flesh appears in it, then the person shall be impure. When the priest sees the undiscolored flesh, he shall pronounce the patient impure. The undiscolored flesh is impure; it is leprosy. But if the undiscolored flesh again turns white, the person shall come to the priest, and the priest shall conduct an examination. If the infection has turned white, the priest shall pronounce as pure the affected person, who is then pure.
Right, and it keeps going with the pronouncements, and then it will eventually go into to a couple of other situations where skin is affected, where it gets into the beard, where there's hair loss, and then it goes into fabrics. And then, of course, the next portion, which we'll do next week, is the ritual for re-entry. So from what we've read, which we've read many times, what's the priest's role? What's the priest doing?
Diagnostician.
Diagnostician, okay. Seeing, right? So Lisa understands. So go back to the beginning of the text, Raj, if you would, please. So starting in verse 3, there are many actions the priest does, but the priest's primary act in this is verse 3. Vira'ah haKohen, and the priest sees. End of verse 3. Vira'ahu haKohen, and the priest shall look upon him or see him. Verse 5. Vira'ah haKohen. Verse 6. Vira'ah haKohen, and the priest shall see. Verse 7. Acharei hera'oto, after seeing him, then the next line, this next, same part of the verse, v'nirah shenit, he shall be seen again. Verse 8, vira'ah haKohen. Verse 10, vira'ah haKohen. It keeps going. The priest's primary job is seeing. The question is, why And how does that seeing help the Mitzorah not only heal, but I would say in our metaphor of today, find a way home? Jane, you have your hand.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It is often said that there's a difference between seeing and observing. Now, you can see something, but observing, I think, seems to require a little bit more, thinking or examining or whatever.
Yeah.
Is the difference here, is there a difference here between seeing and observing?
That's a good question. I think that from so many instances of seeing, there's a lot of observing. Look how detailed it gets. And look how, there's a lot of detail the priest has to see. And the seeing happens again and again and again, right?
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't, by the way, in medicine, it doesn't work that way.
Can I just check?
Yeah, please.
It's interesting, this is coming and going, and I had of the rash, I don't believe it tends to work that way. And I don't say it's that real leprosy affects the nose too. And these exaggerations of fingers and toes falling off,
Right.
or exaggeration, they do happen.
Right.
But I sort of asked the question, who named it leprosy? Maybe it was poison ivy.
Right. And I would say this, it's a skin disease and we don't have to name it leprosy. Don't let that sidetrack.
Okay.
Don't let, it's not worth it.
I think the beauty of the Cohen's scene is more seen into the heart of people rather than seeing these white lesions or whatever they are. I don't know.
So Rabbi Turtz, rightfully so, is saying this is not just seeing on the outside. Maybe it's seeing more than meets the eye. Correct. And then Mike.
I'm a little confused.
Good.
I'm looking at the second page of the handout.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at number 11.
Yeah, verse 11.
It is chronic leprosy on the skin of the body, and the priest shall pronounce the person impure. Being impure, that person need not be isolated.
Right, because they're calling it Sara'at no shenet, meaning it's a chronic condition, can't do anything about it.
Okay, so then now they're creating distinctions.
Yeah.
And this one indicates that this person cannot change.
Somehow the person is in that state and it's not going to be any better. They're going to live with it.
And that person is not considered is not pure.
Interestingly, not pure, but
yet is allowed to reintegrate.
Not isolated. So this can't be just medical, as you said. It's not just about protection of spread of disease.
So let's just take another category. That person who doesn't have chronic leprosy, but is considered pure.
Right, or has it on 98% of his body and is not pure.
But what is the purpose then of isolation?
There you go. So why isolate? What's going on? These are all great questions that Clarence asking. I'm not going to answer them, but the commentaries will. Mike.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether, in fact, examine isn't even a mistranslation, because when you see something, you can see without examining, and you can examine without seeing. So we are talking about another kind of seeing. So I'm wondering, why have they tried to make it as though this isn't a clinical description? It pretends to be. And the translation is following it as though it is a real clinical diagnosis. But clearly something else is going on. And that's why I suggest, is it a mistranslation? Examine? Should we forget about examine?
You and I both know it is, because it's the same verb the priest has been doing the whole time. It just says in verse 17, where they translate examine, Vira'ahu HaKohen, and the priest shall see him.
Yeah.
That's all. It's a seeing. It is an ongoing seeing. Seeing is attention. Seeing is a seeing that seems to me, as Lisa intimated, has to be more than skin deep. So if you look at this, and I just combed the portion for you to do a little bit of upshot, analysis on the ground, which is the key verb is ra'ah, but there's other things the Kohen does. The Kohen also, he's here, quarantines. Kohen, also determines, but seeing is the primary act. And so I would suggest that somehow it is from seeing that the Kohen is able to help healing happen. Not heal himself, by the way, because does the Kohen do anything like, as I always tell the story, when I was 12 and had acne, I went to Dr. Ty. Dr. Ty, I figured out in the office there, I said, Dr. Ty saw, I don't know, probably 7 kids in an hour. And I thought, that's a lot of money. I should be a dermatologist, right? So that was my insight. But Dr. Ty did the same thing. He prescribed, what's the medication for acne that you took as a kid? Tetracycline, yeah. So, here you go. The same diagnosis, acne. And I thought, great. I could have done this myself. What's the big deal? But, so this is not that. The priest gives the person no medication, but does offer the possibility of healing. Let's go to the remez. We're going to have plenty of time to talk. I'm very excited about this, right? All the people, everybody out there is saying, right? Our lovely, intimate crowd.
Doesn't seem like the priest does have an active role in the healing.
Well, it's the really good question is, what is the priest's role in healing? Is there a healing factor? And is seeing, we know seeing is believing, but is seeing, in fact, the impetus to healing? Maybe. Ellen.
Hi, what strikes me is that no miracles are performed. There's no miracle of healing, which you find in Christianity. It's just seeing, and somehow being seen is so crucially important. Everyone needs that desperately, to be seen. And here in Judaism, it's about seeing the other person rather than performing some kind of miracle of healing. I love that.
Yeah. First of all, I want to affirm that. And by the way, I do think that part of the miracle of healing, whether it's in Judaism or in Christianity, though, certainly Jesus does perform amazing, miracles of healing and life renewal. But here, there's nothing offered. The priest has no magic, it seems, except to see.
Except in seeing, the worst thing that a patient has to contend with is uncertainty. Okay, so by the patient seeing by the priest seeing and talking, and now, okay, this is what I got, and this is what we're going to do about it, and this is what's going to happen probably.
So by being seen, literally, right, as we say in sort of today's terms, the important thing is for every human being to be seen for who they are. So somehow the priest is seeing beyond the surface and somehow ordering the person who's affected to world. Okay, let's go to the remez. We're going to do some good remezing. I got Judy Barry Dictor up first. You're going to read me under verse 2. Start with the Rashi, and then we're going to see a strange piece from the Mishnah. Judy or Barry, whoever wants to read. She's going to unmute. No, the dictors are not there. The dictors have gone off to breakfast, but that's okay. I'm going to ask Andy Sverdlov, who's right above the dictors, to read. So Andy, you go.
Yes, let me unmute.
Thank you, sir. So go with the Rashi first, Andy.
So Rashi, I get the short one here. It is a scriptural decree. There is neither purity nor impurity, except by word of the Kohen.
So what is Rashi saying? The Kohen is the chief diagnostician somehow. Whatever the Kohen has to do, right? He is the guy in this, right? It even says V'huva el ha-Kohen, that person must be brought to the Kohen. So the Kohen is the sort of the gatekeeper and somehow the diagnostician. Same, so two different sort of pieces, which are crucial. But now I take this from Mishnah Nagaim. Remember, the Mishnah here is the oral law or the oral discussion, really, of the rabbis that combines with the Gemara to be the Talmud. But what's the Mishnah here? Andy, since you started, why don't you read the Mishnah Nagaim, and it's a curious piece. You'll tell me what it means.
Okay, the Mishnah Nagaim. Rabbi Hanana teaches the colors of the leprosy sign are 16. Rabbi Dosa ben
Harkinas.
My screen was Dosa ben Harkinas says the colors of the leprosy signs are 36. Rabbi Akiva ben Michael says there are 72. This is a great competition they're having. Rabbi Judah says the colors of the leprosy signs should be applied leniently, not stringently. Let a German be judged leniently according to the standards of his own skin. Let an Ethiopian be judged leniently according to the color of his own skin. A priest may examine any leprosy sign save his own. Rabbi Meir says his own and those of his kin.
So now you're getting all these different perspectives, but what are you garnering from this really pretty ancient law, which was, there are no more priests now, there are rabbis. There's no more first temple. There's no more, probably sacrificial system is it's gone. Second temple's gone too. So what are they saying? What are they teaching us about the scene? Lisa.
It's like with Eskimos, they have all different sorts of words for snow, so that it's important, these differences.
A lot of different words for snow, a lot of different colors in the rainbow of Sarat. Okay. All right, Ellen, I don't know if your hand is still up or is it up from before? Was that up from before, Ellen, or is it, did you have something else to add?
You want me to continue? The Kohen shall.
No. I want to make sure Ellen has nothing else to add. I'm assuming no. Okay. So what are we learning here? We're learning that you have to see the person. And no two people are alike. And no two skin types are alike. Yeah, they're very similar. But you should see who the person is, not just their skin. You should see where they come from, not just their skin. And it says twice, and it continues it, you should judge leniently. Clarence.
I'm completely confused.
Good.
I'm rereading the portion, and it seems as though there is a circumstance where if you have nothing under the skin, but on the skin, and the rash goes away, that's a good scenario.
Yeah.
But you could also not have anything under the skin, you have something on the skin, it turns white, then you're pure. But white is not necessarily your original color.
Right. Yeah.
So, but if it stays your undiscolored flesh, meaning your original color,
right,
you're impure.
Right. Well, if it comes back, right, which would seem to be healing, right? So, so
it would, but it's not.
Yeah. So I would say this. I think the rabbis of old were confused as well. So they were trying to make sense of it by opening it up and saying, all right, Harold comes from the priest. He has whatever thing, we have to realize Harold's an Ashkenazi Jew. You know, it's probably Poland, could be Russia. You know, that's his type. Romania, I was close. Romania. So great song. Everybody's different. And so what the rabbis of old are saying is, you have to judge everybody according to who they are and from whence they derive. And Rabbi Meir adds at the end, because what did Rabbi who was it? Was it Rabbi Judah? Yes. So Rabbi Judah, who was the guy who wrote the Mishnah and edited it, says a priest can say and examine anybody except himself or his own. And then Rabbi Meir says, no, even his own. Meaning, if a Kohen wants to judge his family or himself, he can do that too. Mike.
Yeah, I'm maybe going away from your kosher or maybe going into it. It seems to me that obviously the Kohen, the priest, has this special gift. And this special gift, how does his healing, your question, your kosher is, how does his seeing lead to healing and help us home? But if there are no longer priests, what are we supposed to do? Why can Judaism survive without the priests? Why did we have to do? I mean, this question comes up again and again in Leviticus. You know, what is this essential role of the priest? But you know, we haven't got priests anymore. So what is the answer to that?
So what can we learn from the model of the priests who no longer exist that teach us about healing?
That is the question. Yeah.
That is the question. And that is my coaching. That is my coaching. Thank you for asking it in a nice way.
Hypothesis.
All right. Clarence has an hypothesis, and then we're going, I'm going to call on Gail to read us a little bit of the verse 3 content.
So the notion of white, to me, seems like it's a notion of change in the person. It's not their original color. And change is a good thing because it's associated with purity.
So now Clarence has a theory, which I like a lot. The notion of turning white is the notion of change, and it could be associated with purity. Like something has changed on the person or in the person. So now let's go to verse 3. You're getting good. Gail, give us, do we need this first one? Yeah, the first one is just actually going to reinforce Clarence from the Talmud. You see it, Gail, on the skin of his flesh. You just got to unmute. If Gail can't do it, I can.
Gail, you're on mute.
Yeah, Gail, you got to just unmute.
Oh, there I go.
Here you go.
Okay, on the skin of his flesh. This teaches us that the Kohen must look both at the affected area and the surrounding skin all as one. Then he sees hefach lavan if it has turned white and not red and not green and not black and not yellow.
So you have to look at the whole person. You don't just examine the infection, you look at the person in totality. And now the Kohen, the Talmud asks, actually not the Jerusalem Talmud, but the Babylonian Talmud, because they're all talking about this, asks, wait a minute. So the Kohen sees, but it also says, and the Kohen looks, or it implies by saying seeing 3 times in a single verse. If the Kohen looks, shall he not see? Go ahead, Gail.
If the Kohen looks, shall he not see? Hello, Ellen. This is to teach that his eyes must be open, looking at it and seeing the one who comes to him.
Aha! So, as with any good diagnostician, you're not just seeing the illness, you're seeing the person. Crucial, right? And now, actually, Robert Alter is going to answer the question that Michael Feinberg raised. But Gail, give us the Robert Alter when the Kohen sees it.
When the Kohen sees it, the verb ra'ah, see, has the obvious force of examine. But these regulations for skin conditions reflect an ambiguous conception of disease that wavers between pathology and ritual impurity. Thus, the quarantining of the afflicted person might involve fear of contagion or might chiefly be an avoidance of ritual contamination.
Yeah, so altar is helping us understand that the seeing is not a medical examination. The seeing is more than that. The seeing is a seeing beneath the surface, right? A seeing that actually helps the one who's inflicted to see, as Clarence just intimated, right? Lisa?
I was just trying to remember what happened when Miriam turned white. Like, I think she had to isolate when she was white, and then she came out afterwards, and it was because she was bad-mouthing Moses.
So Lisa, right? Lisa is giving us the midrash on Numbers chapter 12, when Miriam and Aaron badmouth Moses. And what do the rabbis teach in the Talmud? They teach that somebody gets skin disease because it comes from inside. When you use words, Mitzorah, Motzi Shem Ra, it's an acronym, they think. And so the rabbis say, yes, in fact, Miriam badmouthed Moses, she got leprosy.
I actually think the notion of white impurity is much more than, oh, now I can reintegrate. It's almost as though you're among the most high human person.
Yeah, I love that, Clarence. You don't even know what you just said.
It's the most unusual circumstance.
Yeah, so Clarence is
actually.
So Clarence is saying something, right? So when you are confronting such a disease and such a challenge, in confronting it and in growing through it, you achieve a height that few do. We're going to come back to that. Hold it on the side burner. I just want to look quickly at verse 4, 5. Carol Sharp, are you able to read? I want the commentaries on verse 4 and 5. This is all about the isolation and what that implies.
Okay, the Kohen.
The Rashi.
I'm sorry?
The Rashi is first, yeah. The Kohen shall isolate the person 7 days.
He shall close him off in one house, and he shall not come to the Kohen until the end of the week.
So Rashi understands, just like the Talmud, it gives the afflicted or infected person time to be in his own skin. To think about who he is, where he is, what's going on. All right, don't come back to me in 3 days, right? He's not giving him his cell phone number, not going to call him the next night. The Datsa Kenim is going to add to that, the regulation. Go ahead, Kat.
He is not forbidden to leave. Rather, the Kohen can't see him. Thus, the affliction is closed off.
Meaning the one who's the seer is not going to look at him again for another 7 days. And of course, somebody is thinking, why 7? And all of us would say, well, that's the cycle of creation. So it has to be the cycle of recreation. That's what, the time we sit Shiva. It's the 7 cycle of renewal. And then the Sforno, who actually is going to now align to what Lisa just noted about Miriam. Go ahead.
The period of isolation is designed to prompt the afflicted to look inside. Then the Kohen shall quarantine it for another 7 days. The Kohen examines the Metzorah that he should examine himself.
Aha! So now it's combining the Clarence commentary and the Lisa commentary to say, this is enabling the person who is challenged to take the time to see. The Kohen sees maybe what's, on the outside and a little more, and the person has to see what's on the inside. Powerful, important, and now it's partly answering Michael's question. We don't have Kohanim anymore. What do we do? Why is this pertinent and relevant? Which I think it really is in a lot of ways. And now we're going to get into the challenge of diagnosis, or at least how does the Kohen know if in fact the person has recovered, is clean or not clean? And the words tameh and tahor don't mean clean and unclean. They mean ritually pure or ritually impure. If Ellen had that discoloration, she wouldn't be unclean. She would be unable to come to the holy precinct and offer sacrifice and witness celebration and share in a sacred meal. So she'd be cut off from the sacred community. That is really what's going on here. Yeah? So now look at verse 10 and 11. If the Kohen looks and finds on the skin a white swelling, which is pure and some hair white, with a patch of undiscolored flesh in the swelling, it is recurring leprosy on the skin. The Kohen shall pronounce him clean. Exactly the verse that Clarence noted. What is this Sarat Noshenet? And what's going on here? What's the nature of clean and unclean? Who do I have up reading? I'm going to have Harold read. Harold's right here. Harold Weiser, go ahead. The Rashi, nice one.
Notwithstanding the surface appearance improving health, there is an old festering infection just underneath, so the white remains. He is tameh, ritually unclean.
So somehow they're trying to diagnose between what's able to change and what's not able to change. Okay? So they're making a diagnosis, but it isn't necessarily a medical diagnosis. It's a status diagnosis, which is interesting and different for us. Right? So I see Andy's hand is up. I don't want to leave Andy's hand.
Yeah, Michael raised an interesting question before. Why are they having this discussion if there's no priesthood? Are they commenting that they are now going to be like the priests and observe people? Or are they saying this is what the priests used to do, our interpretation? Why are they having this discussion at all?
Right, well, clearly they're having this discussion because they're the rabbis of old. Anything that was in Torah is important and we can learn from it, right? Nothing is there for nothing. So there's no superfluous words in the Torah. They don't excise anything. So they have to find meaning or make meaning from it. But I would say in the world of today, in a post or a pandemic society, it speaks volumes to us. And I think you're almost onto something, Andy, but we're going to get to it. Sure. Ellen has her hand.
Oh,
Ellen, you made
Ellen, unmute.
You know, gotta unmute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I also want to follow up on Michael's question, although it may take us a little metaphorically away from the Torah. But I think as a teacher, the whole idea of looking and judging leniently according to the ability or the character, the personality, what the student brings to the situation is so beautiful. And I think we can use it in our lives. It doesn't have to be a priest, but I mean, I, as a professor, as a teacher, I can learn from this notion. So I think perhaps that's one way that the text can become meaningful to us.
Yeah, no, I think without question, but I wouldn't dismiss the Kohanim are looking at skin infection and the spread of that infection and the control of that infection, or affection, I should say. And that is what they're judging, or that is what they're seeing. I don't want to say they're judging, they're seeing. And they're trying to make determination. And there's confusion, actually, by Clarence, and I think the rabbis in the Talmud trying to parse it out. What does it mean? Because if you look at verse 12, right? Ve'im paroa tifrach, right? So if the eruption spreads out over the skin so that it covers all of the skin of the affected person from head to toe, wherever the priest sees, if the priest sees that the eruption has covered the whole body, he shall pronounce the affected person who is pure from having turned all white. And you say to yourself, really? Really? So there's a challenge there to try to understand what is being sort of played out here and how is it right? What is it? It's not about disease. It could be about dis-ease, however. And it's not about the Kohanim alone. It's about the act of their seeing another person and helping the person see him or herself. Lloyd.
It's about stigma, status, and society.
Stigma, 3 S's. Stigma, status, society. Go ahead.
Okay, earlier there was a discussion about what happens with a woman who gives birth.
Mm-hmm.
She's deemed to be ritually impure for 33 days, but it just means she cannot deal with sacrificial meat. And then she ultimately brings the sacrifice and life goes back to normal.
Yes.
There's someone else who has a status, they're called a zav, it's someone who has some sort of discharge.
Yeah, yeah.
They're an intermediate thing, it's not discussed right here, but I'll mention it and then I'll get it, then I'm leaving it. The Metzora, the leper, they have it the worst.
Yeah.
Because if there is a diagnosis of being called a leper, they get thrown out of the camp.
Yeah.
And so with a woman with childbirth, she doesn't need someone to see it, she just knows it.
Yeah.
And you can go ahead and say, why should someone be unclean for giving birth? That's a whole other discussion.
Hold on, don't go there.
Here though,
Yeah.
you're giving, if the person is diagnosed as being a leper, Metzora, they get the boot.
Yeah.
It's sort of like super quarantine.
Well, okay, so Lloyd is saying stigma, status, society. So if you have that Metzora, right, there's a stigma attached at least to some degree. Your status is, right, outside the camp, and you can't come back to society until either things clear up, things change, or interestingly, you turn all white. Right? Why couldn't the affected person go to the mikvah? Yes, Judy, I love that question. And I would say they do wash in order to come back into the community, right? They have to wash. It's part of the thing. So I just want to let Clarence refute Lloyd.
If, when you say the terms are related to ritual,
Mhm.
pure and impure,
Yeah.
most people are not ritually pure in their everyday lives. So you're not throwing everybody out of the camp.
No,
right?
no.
So that, to me, means that you're not throwing people out.
Yeah, but this is ritually impure for a reason.
This is not the, okay, someone touches the dead body.
Different
they go
story.
through a purification process, they're not given the boot from the camp. They just can't deal with sacred foods.
Right.
But over here though, they actually get tossed from the camp.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I have a second
yeah.
point though.
Go ahead.
That toss-up, let's say, from the camp is potentially an enormous opportunity for self-development.
It is.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
This is true, but I will tell you.
Stigma necessarily.
Yeah, so now we're gonna be upbeat, we're gonna climb slowly over. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, Lloyd has a counterpoint.
Because what happens is Miriam goes through that same thing.
Yeah.
Miriam ends up gossiping about Moses' wife.
Yeah.
And her punishment is she comes down with
Sarah.
with leprosy.
Yeah.
And for all the self-development, it's made very clear. She gets tossed.
Yeah.
And Moses pleads on his sister's behalf. It's not, gee, let's be contemplative. It's
Right.
like, God, come on.
Yeah, and by the way, Moses pleads and can't do a damn thing. Nothing. Dave's able to go back to the text. Dave. I'm not hearing you, Dave. You talking?
Dave, you're on mute.
No, Dave is talking, but I'm not hearing him. I don't know what's going on, Dave. We'll come back to you, Dave. Unless you figure it out, or when you figure it out, not a problem, right? So now we have, I gotta get this one out because this is the one that's the strange one that I just read. So Judy, my cousin Judy, can you read this one for us? This is under verse 12, 13. This is, so if it turns all white, he's clean. Clarence has one answer. Is that the answer? Or what other answer could there be? We'll get Sam Samarthia Hirsch, Judy.
Okay, this law refutes the contagion theory of Sara'at. For
For if the purpose of the quarantine is to prevent the spread of a feared infection, then an affliction which covers the entire body should be the most dangerous of all.
So Sam Chevrah, founder of Neo-Orthodoxy, is telling us, shouldn't this be, if it's about infection, the worst one? And now the Torah is going to, in fact, partly answer. Go ahead.
The spread to the entire body shows that the affliction is superficial, since it does not penetrate deeply. Once it completely covers, it is on the verge of healing and will soon darken and disappear.
So the Kohanim are falsely looking or interestingly looking for any reason to readmit. But this is a strange one, which is it's all over you. So, so Ellie Monk has one that I think is interesting, but shows you it's not just a medical diagnosis. Look at the Ellie Monk, Jude.
If the white area covers as much as 99% of the body, the person is declared contaminated. But as soon as the affliction reaches its climax, engulfing him, it becomes pure. This teaching is consistent with the idea that God's salvation may feel closest to a person only when this ordeal reaches its greatest intensity, when he is on the edge. It is then the turning point in human destiny. It is then that the turning point in human destiny occurs. So too taught our sages in the spiritual realm. Only when a generation is totally worthy or totally not will the Redeemer appear.
Right, so this is the interesting theory. It's a very Messiah-like theory, but why it's interesting is it relates to what Clarence said. So when a person is totally engulfed in their sickness or their disease or their dis-ease, it's then that new awareness happens, perhaps. It's then that they understand they are not the disease, and nor will they be defined by the disease. And that they can rise above, and they rise to a very high height if they can use that process, and if they know, even in their isolated status, they're not alone. Go with me to the drash. It's good. It's good. And it will answer the question that Michael asked and that Andy underscored, and that Ellen underscored, or somebody else underscored after that. Andy, I forget. So who's reading in the drash? Right, I have my next, I actually have Raj. Raj, why don't you start, Raj, and then we're going to go to Carol Scheffler, and we may end with Ellen as well.
Focus on the body, its pain and sores, its frequent need for healing and repair. All of these pointing towards mortality brings thoughts such as the Baal Shem Tov's to mind. Pretense does not hold up well in the face of unbearable itching, oozing, or boils. When the skin that normally marks the boundary between each of us and the rest of creation breaks down, the rest of the self may break with it. Ridges and crevices that appear in the surfaces of flesh that are normally smooth may disrupt our sense of at-homeness in the world. We fear that discoloration on the outside of the body will signal to everyone we meet that something inside us is not right. We are discomforted, uneasy in that skin. The priest's relentless quest to impose order, directed in this particular case at the outbreak of lesions and sores, and assisted, as is often the case by Leviticus's dry, repetitive prose, cries out in the pathos of its own limitations. What can the holy man do in the face of a contagious skin disease that he can describe in precise detail, but cannot, for all his ritual knowledge, cure? Not much, we learn. The priest performs no magic whatever. He bathes no incense at the inflection, recites no incantations. He cannot make the bad stuff go away. Medicine is not the art he practices.
Again, crucial. As we said before, and as Ellen noted as well, no magic is performed. We don't get a miracle from the priest. We get, why don't you take a little while, take 7 days, and go to one of the lepers camps outside the camp, right? And just hang out. There'll be other people there. Go there, pack a bag, right? So what are we getting from this? One more paragraph, Raj.
But I don't get that there'll be other people there.
Well, I mean, you don't know this from now, but you only know it from Nama and the other, the post-Torah stories of, right? In fact, the Haftarah, is it this week or next week, the Haftarah will say, It's all about the camp of lepers. I don't remember which one. Lloyd's gonna check. So here we go. So one more paragraph. You'll see the 5 acts of the Kohen.
5 acts, and only those 5 are ascribed to the priest in the relevant sections of Tazria and Mitzorah, chapters 13-14. Aside from the usual round of sacrifices, he listens carefully to the victim's report and decides if further action is required. He sees, examines, or investigates, judging by the signs whether infection has run its course. He pronounces the afflicted person, garment, or home pure or impure, and by saying the words, making things so, he imposes or lifts quarantines on persons, garments, and dwellings, and he orders destructions of homes and fabrics that cannot be freed of impurity. The enormous detail supplied over and over again for his diagnosis by a normally laconic text only serves to highlight how much our ancestors knew about the symptoms and progress of the afflictions they confronted, and how little they understood the cause or cure for those afflictions.
So these 5 acts of the priest, as we highlighted, seeing is by far the biggest act, but it certainly then leads to listening, pronouncing, imposing or lifting quarantine, or ordering whatever comes next. Kara Sheffield, go ahead. Give us now contemporary readers.
Contemporary readers of Leviticus have more advanced science at our disposal. Of course, that science, contrary to the Torah's, has no room in it for divine intervention in the natural order of sickness and health, though many of us still petition God for healing, and no place either for the kind of moral calculus that the rabbis exhibited in linking tsarat, the skin disease that afflicts Mitzorah, to tail-bearing, based on Miriam's alleged crime and apparent punishments in Numbers 12. Modern skin diseases therefore run their course without recourse to the clergy. We consult dermatologists instead and benefit from antibiotic salves and other healing. Our doctors often know how to alleviate the pain and suffering that Leviticus takes for granted, but never explicitly mentions, perhaps because there's not a lot its priests can do about them. And yet we too cannot heal every malady that we understand, and we continue to understand far less than we would like. The text, for its part, though it knows no cure for the ailment it describes, does offer a remedy of sorts, made all the more valuable because medical treatment is lacking. The priest places the suffering Israelite in an order of meaning and community. Once one realizes that the priest is not there to play doctor or even public health official, the link between the priestly makers of meaning and us becomes clear and compelling.
All right, so this is now going to come to Michael's sub-koshi of the koshi. One more paragraph, and then I'm going to call it out.
The Parshat's chosen vehicle for meaning making speaks to us, and with great immediacy. We inhabit skins, after all. A few of us still wear skins in winter, and almost all of us adorn ourselves with accessories made of skin. The word for skin is the same as the word for leather in the Torah, and our Parshat trades on that. What is more, the parchment from which we read Leviticus in synagogue is itself made of animal skin. How can we not pay attention to the text that speaks so eloquently to and about the basics of existence?
So he's doing the metaphor, extending the metaphor of skin, but saying, right, the skin is our container. And the skin in Judaism is somehow sacred, right? Ellen, read me a couple paragraphs, then maybe I'll end with Ellis, if Ellis is around to read the last paragraph or two. Milgram. Ellen Hills,
Yes, Milgram, puzzling through what and how the code of skin diseases means, finds a major clue provided by the text in the fact that the scale diseased person must bring a hatat offering, implying that he has polluted the sanctuary. Thus, in this case, as in all cases of ritual impurity, we are confronted with the binary opposition between holiness and impurity, which symbolizes the forces of life and death. The entire purification process is nothing but a ritual, a rite of passage, marking the transition from death to life.
Right, so this is directly Milgram. He's quoting Milgram. Go ahead.
There is ample evidence for the symbolic character of Sa'arat, to which Milgram points. The Torah presumably knew of many other illnesses that beset ancient Israelites. None are given the priestly attention lavished on this one. God presumably could have awarded Aaron or Moses the gift of miraculous cure to this disease, but does not. This consistent reticence seems designed to clear space for commentary, such as the one offered by the Baal Shem Tov or others that we ourselves provide. The Torah suggests there is meaning to be found in diseases of the skin and wants us to seek it out for ourselves.
All right, one more paragraph, Helen.
If we follow the Torah's lead, part of that meaning will reside in the strengthening of communal ties. Milgram highlights this feature of Leviticus's account. As the celebrant moves from the realm of impurity outside the camp, restored first to the community, then to his home, and finally to his sanctuary, he has passed from impurity to holiness, from death to life, is reinstated with his family, and is reconciled with his God.
So this is a healing that transcends the physical. It connects to community, and it only happens, or often happens, through isolation, where you realize what community means. Ellis, you want to give us the last paragraph? It's community is assisted.
Community is assisted.
No, Ellen, hold on a second. I give it to Ellis to finish this one up. Ellen and Ellis are very close, but Ellis has got this one. Go ahead.
Community is assisted mightily by the reminder that neither those who suffer nor those who are spared suffering for the moment are, by virtue of that condition, closer to God. Sickness, like Za'arat, imposes isolation. Deliberate effort is required to relieve that isolation. Effort which in turn makes for deeper connection among the human beings involved in it. Affliction may also promote reflection on the true worth of things, and so bring about renewed contact with God. This in turn may lead to greater attachment to others who take the question of meaning seriously and answer it in the context of the same ritual framework. None of this can happen if we stand dumb in the face of inexplicable suffering, rather than use affliction as an occasion to seek out meaning and community. The Torah is far wiser than to ignore the healing power of language, including symbolic language. It is wise enough to know that not only physicians are needed for healing, one hopes that we are wise enough to know this as well.
So, I mean, I love what Professor Arnie Eisen is saying, or Dr. Arnie Eisen, former head of Chancellor of Jewish Theological Seminary. What's he saying to us? What's the takeaway for you? I think, the priest places the suffering Israelite in an order of meaning and community. Else, go ahead.
I was going to say this sort of fits into the whole, how I view the Torah as a whole, which is this exercise between, physical and metaphysical. Yep. And the design when you are faced with something that runs, because I think the priests are trying to prevent a contagion.
Yeah.
But not a physical contagion, not a disease contagion of the body, but one of the mind. And it's interesting that they use the seeing because it creates a parallel, because what dissolves the binds of a community, one of the ingredients is difference making. And what they're doing is the opposite of that, and that's difference telling.
Right, and I would say also, first of all, thoughtful, and I love it. What else dissolves the bonds of community? Not being seen, not feeling seen, right? So, I mean, again, I think there's a wonderful truth to that. I'm gonna go with Dave Zabel and then Lisa. If Dave can be here. Dave, try it again. Dave, you talking? For some reason, Dave, we're not hearing you, and I don't know why. I don't know why. Dave, we're gonna come back to you. I apologize. Lisa.
For some reason, this purification and the bonds between life and death and getting closer to God is also reminding me of Nadab and Abihu for some reason.
Okay, tell me why, because I'm curious about that.
It's because it seems.
Because it says, because Moses replies to the death of Nadab and Abihu, it is by those who I bring close that I sanctify myself, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
It's a strange connection.
It is an interesting connection. I think what's implied here about that Arnie Eisen, underscores is he says something really important, which is that being sick doesn't make you close to God. Suffering doesn't make you close to God. How you deal with it might. How you respond to it could. But it's not the fact that you suffer. Oh, you're stricken, boy, you have a great chance. No. It's how you deal with it. And it's not only that, but how the priest sees you and helps maybe reframe how you see your place in the world. Do I want to share this now, or I want to wait to share this? So I'll share it now, and then I have Michael Feinberg start us on this. So people get sick all the time, and people sometimes see themselves through the sickness and give themselves the frame of that sickness and exist in it. My wife, may her memory be for blessing, decided that being sick was just what it was and decided to use that as a frame through which to reframe her world. So at Sloan Kettering, maybe the first or second time we went, she said, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna knit scarves for people. And I thought, okay, honey, whatever you wanna do. So she knit scarves to raise money for MSKCC and for her doctor, David Kelson, in research, and raised lots of money, 25 grand or something like that, which was amazing. She did it because she didn't want to be defined by her illness. Not only that, when she went to Sloan Kettering, she was, even in real sickness and yicky stuff, was unusually joyful and would oftentimes go talk to other families who couldn't understand her. But they couldn't understand what she was saying because they spoke different languages. But she communicated. She would bring people tea. She brought bags of candy, like Priscilla Polo used to do, went on the buses in Israel and gave out candy to people. And I saw she was not really much different in regular life than she was in the middle of sickness. So she used it as an opportunity to create community, to be united by whatever this place was where you're supposed to get better, but to create a connection. She saw people, not as sick people. So that's my little sort of connective link to Arnie Eisen and what he made me think of. And now, Michael, you may get an answer in part in the beautiful Kerry Olitsky, and he is going to agree with Ellis, especially Ellis's last statement, I think, in an important one.
Okay, but before that, since you put it out there, Jeffrey, you put out this Talmudic saying about redemption only being likely when we're totally bad or totally good. And that seems to me the only way we can understand this extraordinary image of, if you're covered completely with these scales, you're okay. But if you're only almost covered, then you're not okay. And the commentator says something about like, well, 99% isn't good enough. You've got to be on the edge. But if 99% isn't on the edge, I don't know what is, but I guess 99.9%. But anyway, I think this is a really interesting thing which we haven't explored. I hope you will sometime.
I may get to it at the very end as a related, connected thing, but I think Kariolisky implies what that means.
Okay.
That it's not about the medical. But go ahead.
Zarat, leprosy, rotting skin, wounds that ooze endlessly with stagnant pus, great body odor that knows no cosmetic cover-up, excruciating pain that tests the endurance of even the most faithful among us, a real disease that afflicts real people, causing real suffering, real disfigurement, and real death. It would be easier not to talk about it, to avoid it, to pretend that it does not exist, as did some of the early reformers, and instead together probe the depths of meaning elsewhere in the Torah text. There's no point mincing words, no reason to try to turn the Torah into a kinder, gentler sort of document that radiates only divine light and sheds no darkness. A sacred text that elevates the spirit while avoiding the existential realities of human existence. But the Torah is much of this world, the world of the physical body, as it is of the other world, the world of spirit and soul.
And so the rabbis, of course, what did they do? They connected the two worlds because they knew they were interlinked, interwoven, which is where they go and where Rabbi Olisky, who just you should know, is very much a Reform rabbi. Was my teacher. He was the head of the School of Education at HUC when I learned there. And I illustrated a couple of his books because he asked me to do that, right? So Kariolisky is very much a Reform rabbi, but he sees deeper, like the Kohanim, to the task that we all share. Give us another paragraph.
Parshat Tazria may be about leprosy to the ancient folk, but it is not about sickness or disease of the body. It is not about folk medicine and healing. It is not even about ritual impurity and priestly cleansing. The Metzora is merely a metaphor. It is about the disease of the soul, a disease to which we are all susceptible, a disease that is so powerful that it can consume the body and the spirit in one fell swoop. Yes, our Torah portion is all about diseased and broken souls. But what is frightening about it is not the wounds that require constant attention that are described in sickening detail here and elsewhere. No, what is frightening about our portion is the way in its bleak and dismal darkness finds a way to reflect the dark side of the self. Through the genius of the biblical author, who points out through the body what she wants to teach us, I like the she, about the soul, we seem to learn just a little bit more about ourselves. Listen carefully to what she is teaching us. This week's Torah portion reminds us that with all the good we have to offer, everything commendable that we have discovered about ourselves, there remains a dark side, a defect, a misalignment of character. When we forget, that's when the disease erupts. Perhaps it is dafka because of the haughtiness of self-aggrandizement, a belief that we have achieved a certain level of moral perfection. Tazara reminds us that we are human, imperfect, prone to mortal error. Like so many other bodily diseases that we have learned through the discoveries of modern medical science, live inside of us all the time, threatening to play havoc with our bodies when we least expect it. Tazarat is always there, ever ready to erupt and take control. And when Tazarat gushes forth, its lesions may adhere to our bodies, but it also casts a shadow over our souls. and only the bright light of Torah, which has the power to illuminate our lives, can diminish the darkness of our souls.
And now he's going to give us the framing. So, okay, so we don't have any more Kohanim. The temple doesn't exist. The priest isn't seeing and seeing and seeing. So who is? And if it's not just physical, but spiritual and psycho-spiritual, then how do we use it as a guide for the world? That's the last paragraph. Go ahead, Mike.
According to the Torah text, a white leprous swelling of the skin is a symptom of ritual impurity or uncleanness. However, when the skin on the entire body turns white, after the disease has run its course and the body has responded, this whiteness is then declared a mark of cleanness. I would like a doctor's comment on this, on whether it really has run its course. But anyway, and we learn from the text that the priest is the only one capable of healing a body of his or her leprosy. But what is taking place? The priest does not actually heal the person of leprosy, and the lesions do not disappear in their entirety. They leave their mark on the individual in the form of a white powder. And so by analyzing this unusual process of ritual cleansing, we come to understand that through this process, the priest takes on the leprosy himself. By transferring the burden from the one who is afflicted, he leaves only the trace reminder of the disease with the afflicted person. The priest, that's you and me, in our particular understanding of the text, carries that burden with and joins it with the burden of others and of his own broken soul. By doing so, he is able to help people experience their lives as a blessing once again. At the same time, we realize that although we, like the leper, are unclean and broken, through real healing outside and in, we have the power to cleanse one another. When we recognize this profound spiritual truth, then we, as modern priests, can begin the process of healing that brings us back to who and where we need to be. I think this requires a lot of thinking about.
Yeah, it certainly does. Let's go to unshare, Raj, so we can all see each other, right? So the great challenge for us is Olitsky is trying to extend the priestly seeing and the priestly, diagnosis, or how the Kohen deals with the Metzora to us today. Because as Michael, right, you asked, there is no priest. There isn't, right? And we're not diagnosing. So what is it? What is it that we're doing? Well, number one, we're seeing. We're seeing the other person. What else is Olitsky saying to us or saying to you? Is he helping you understand anything about how we help the broken find their way home?
11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Judy, you may be counting out loud.
Oops, sorry.
Well, who says to take on some of the burden, that by coming close, you share the burden and it helps the healing process.
So by coming close, you share some of the burden and it helps the healing process. Raj.
Rabbi, I may be stating the obvious, but in the present day, I see rabbis actually doing that, but more at the psychological level. So for instance, let's say you have a family who lost their father or their mom. You have a kid that's basically struggling with that, but he's also a religious kid and he comes to a rabbi. Now, be it a reformist rabbi or an Orthodox rabbi, but it's that rabbi that now has to kind of confront with that loss, and how does he deal with that? So I think this, when Rabbi Olitsky is talking about the soul, it's not just like the disease of the soul, as in like, that you have done something wrong, but it's also that people get hurt. I mean, I mean, that's basically like, so I think that there is some truth to that.
Yeah, yeah. So the brokenness is part of life, right? We're all broken. So he's trying to extend it to the idea that everybody's a little bit broken. And that when we see the brokenness in somebody else and try to help them deal, somehow the brokenness in us is exposed, and also we're strengthened by the reach out, the hand and heart we extend. That's a big deal. What else? Yeah, who else? Somebody else that know? So what else? Oh, let's get Clarence. I knew Clarence was gonna come after this. Go ahead.
So the Miriam midrash.
Yes.
Is it still central to understanding this portion or not?
I think it's a parallel. It's one that both Arnie Eisen and Lisa brought up, right? So if you ask a question for a reason.
So if so, why is all the commentary since not really focused on it?
Right. I think for over two reasons. One is Miriam directly got Sarat was a Mitzorah because of the bad mouthing of her brother Moses, which is why the rabbis say Mitzorah, Mochi Shemra. It's an acronym. Yeah. We can't make the assumption here, right? We can't make the assumption, you had some moral failure, and that's why you have some skin infection. You got something cooking there. We're not going to judge you.
It's not determinative in our tradition.
That's correct. What we know is, however, and which is, that you come to the Kohen if you have something going on. As Tom said, what's the biggest worry of a patient?
The unknown.
Unknown, uncertainty. You come to the Kohen to know you're not alone, to know that there's a sacred order of the universe, to know that even though you're suffering and struggling, there's a way to deal. Not always a way to heal, because those who are sick don't always get better. But if they can be put in the framework, I mean, my cousin Judy, where do you work, Judy?
At MGH.
Yeah, Mass General. What do you do there, Jude?
I take care of patients waiting for liver transplants.
So I know that Judy is like the Kohen, that Judy tries to provide sacred order to people who are suffering and tries to advance the cause of hope. How? Not by making magic happen, but by being fully present. That's the goal. So what is Olitsky saying? In a very human and beautiful way, we are called, Michael, a mamlechet kohanim, a kingdom of priests. If all of us are part of that priestly kingdom, then all of us are kohanim. All of us have to help other people in their sickness and suffering and struggles feel seen and known. And here's the coolest thing, when we see that other, they see us too. So not only is it potentially healing for that person, it speaks to your spirit and heals you a little bit too. Michael, last comment. You muted me.
No, I was no comment. I was actually meaning to applaud you, Jeffrey. I loved your summing up.
I'm sorry. Rabbi Frankel, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to give a quick plug for next week, because Rabbi Serpent's going to be traveling.
I am going to be doing the installation of Rabbi Aaron Binder in Cincinnati next Friday and Saturday.
But we're going to continue this very thread, and I hope you'll come and join and study with the other rabbi, because it's a really nice thing to get to study together. We're going to continue, as it is often a double portion from Tazria to Mansora, take this metaphor, look at it in the context of the house plate. What happens when Sarah doesn't afflict the body, but actually afflicts your home? And how is that connected to the work that we're doing to get ready for Passover? either the literal Bidikot Chametz, cleaning out the chametz from our home, and also the spiritual work we're supposed to be doing.
Beautiful.
Passover, it's all connected. I hope you'll join me next week.
Awesome. That's an awesome kosher. I love that. I'm going to be teaching Torah, by the way. I'm going to be teaching more of this stuff, more of infectious disease and the Kohen's role as I do Aaron Binder's installation, our former rabbinic intern for 3 years in Cincinnati. Should be a lot of fun. Guys, I so appreciate you. I hope everybody is well. If you have a scaly affection, I don't want to see it.
Call the church.
All right. Sending lots of love and good Shabbat.
Shabbat shalom all.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
folks.
shalom.